Welcome to La Taverna Friuli podcast, the definitive podcast on the wines of Friuli Venezia Giulia. I'm your host, Wayne Young. Join me here each week for casual conversations with wine people and other characters from the undiscovered region of Friuli Venezia Giulia in northeastern Italy. Hey, Friuli wine friends, and welcome to La Taverna. And this week we have a really interesting and really wonderful guest. I met Rose Thomas through Threads, of all things, the Twitter clone of Meta, where we both commented on a post that spoke about making podcasts in something that was not your native language. So we hooked up on there because Rose does do a podcast in Italian. She is American, as I am, and she loves Italy, and she also does podcasts in Italian. And we also found out that she absolutely loves Friuli Venezia Giulia. So in exchanging some messages on Threads, we immediately said, okay, you do a podcast, I do a podcast. We need to exchange podcasts. So Rose does a podcast called Modo di Bere, and you can find her podcast just about everywhere. All you have to do is search for Modo di Bere, so Mododibere. If you search for her on YouTube, you will find her. If you search for her on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you will find her. If you go to mododibere.com, you will see everything that she does. And she is prolific. She is creating a magazine called Modo di Bere. And what do you mean by Modo di Bere? In Italian, we have a saying that says modo di dire, which basically means an idiom, which means like a phrase, an idiomatic slang type phrase. So modo di bere is a play on those words, on modo di dire. And she's really interested in dialects, which is really important to me because of Friulano. Friulano is a language of its own, but she's really interested in documenting not just Italian dialects, but dialects around the world. But she's super interested in Italian wine. Her goal is to visit every one of the 21 Italian regions. I think she says she's about halfway there. So we got together one evening last week to exchange podcasts. I did a podcast with her, which will be published on her channel. So if you want to listen to that, you're going to have to search for Modo di Bere and make sure you subscribe to her podcast. And then she agreed to do an interview with me. And I was really interested in understanding how she sort of fell in love with Friuli Venezia Giulia. And in this podcast, we find out lots of things about how life guided her to Friuli Venezia Giulia, which kind of happened for me as well. So it was a really huge pleasure listening to Rose's really energetic enthusiasm for language and for wine and for food and for life in general. I cannot impress upon you all enough that you must go and find and follow Rose on her Modo di Bere podcast and her Modo di Bere YouTube channel, because she's taking things to a whole new level. She's going to make an entire television show about the world of wine, about the world of dialects, and such an interesting project. And I am so psyched because of all of the places where she's been to Friuli Venezia Giulia twice. So we're doing something right here in Friuli. But anyway, this is a wonderfully long and casual and interesting conversation that I've had with Rose. We were drinking some wine during our podcast. I was drinking some Cialarosso. She was drinking, I believe, a Pinot Grigio Ramato. And we just had a wonderful time chatting and talking and sipping And it was such a pleasure for me to converse and exchange energy with the lovely Rose Thomas from Modo di Bere. So here you are. Without further ado, let's get into our conversation here with Rose. Maybe as you're sitting someplace with a glass of wine, you can say, Wayne says hello, Big Apple.
I'll do that.
Please do. Please do. Please. Rose, thank you so much for coming on La Taverna. It's a real pleasure having you here. Rose Thomas?
Yeah, I go by my first and middle name. So Rose Thomas.
Okay. And you have your blog and your magazine that's called Modo di Bere. So how did you fall in love with this whole culture of Italian wine and Italian dialects and all of this sort of stuff? Tell me a little bit about your origin story.
Well, you know what's really so fun about that question is that while my love for Italian wines and dialects was born here in Brooklyn, where I live, my Modo di Bere project, which has lit up my life for the last few years, was actually born in Friuli Venezia Giulia. So I can tell that part of the story. But the origin is really that I'm a singer-songwriter. And so I was always working in restaurants thinking that this would be a job that I could do where, maybe I wouldn't get fired if I went on tour for a few weeks.
Okay.
Right. So very much kind of a day job situation. So, I've really worked I worked at a library for a while, but I did some kind of different kinds of music promotion things. I had a house concert venue back in Nebraska where I'm from. But really, a lot of my career was service jobs in restaurants from the time I was maybe 15. But in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I went to college, I started a music series on Monday nights of different singer-songwriters. And there was a bartender there who was, I think, the first craft cocktail bartender in Nebraska, a good 10 or 15 years after the, coastal cocktail revolution. Everything trickled.
And it made its
slowly,
way inland.
And he had a bow tie and a poker face. It was very, quite a surprise for people. Everyone was like, what is he doing over there? He would bring in a candle and he would handwrite the specials, and they were all of these cool historic drinks. And I just thought they were delicious. I was like, what is this? And each drink had this history. And I got really interested in becoming a bartender and becoming a mixologist.
Okay.
I spent a little bit of time living in Northeast Iowa. I got my first bartender job, which was not a craft cocktail place. It was at a farmer bar in an Amish town in rural Minnesota, just like across the Iowa border. So I just really dove in. I learned as much as I could. Then I ended up working at a more respectable hotel, like old-fashioned hotel bar in Iowa, and where there was a much better venue for these historic cocktails.
Right.
And at that point, I really got to dig in and learn. But then I found out that you couldn't order whatever you wanted from the state-controlled liquor board. And so that was really interesting. Infusions were also technically illegal at that time. And so,
Really?
yeah. And so then I actually met some people who were involved with a publication called Edible Iowa. It's a magazine kind of franchise about, that writes about food and drink around the country in the US. And they did a feature on me and my bartending. And so, I got a little bit involved. I probably would have gotten more involved with that, changed the liquor laws in Iowa scene. But, then I fell in love with a guitar player and I moved to New York City and just have had a wonderful time here for the last 14 or so years. And I wanted to, I was like a kid in the candy store. I found out that there was a restaurant nearby where they had a Negroni section on the menu. And I was just like, oh, forbidden fruit, all these different amari that I'd had a really hard time getting my hands on in the Midwest. And you would just go, I got to go to these cocktail bars, and it was like I had read their cookbooks, so I had this thrilling experience of mixology, and then immediately started working at an Italian restaurant, and I did create cocktails for them. I was able to create cocktails for the whole restaurant group, which is the Aita restaurant, working with the chef Sylvia Barbon, who's lovely,
Hmm.
and that whole group of friends who, and colleagues who opened the Larina restaurant and now a few different restaurants around the city. And yeah, Julia Pelliccioni, who is from Emilia Romagna originally, who's actually back living there now, um, she taught me about wine. And I
Okay.
had seen wine over there.
I
And
had seen one.
I
I had
just
heard of this
knew
this magical elixir made from
I could
grapes.
just tell that as soon as I mean, obviously, I like to get into things with enthusiasm and learn a lot.
Right.
You can tell I'm sort of a bookish person, right? I could tell that once I got into wine, it was just going to take over my life. So I was
Okay.
holding it to the side because I was still really into my mixology. I became the spirits buyer there. And then um, I started working with these Italians from all different regions, and I love languages. So, yeah, I asked them to teach me Italian, and they immediately started teaching me their local dialects.
Okay.
Immediately. So I started and particularly the detti, the modo di dire, the way of
Okay.
saying. And so I've got a great memory and I love
Good for you.
language. Uh,
Good for you. You're a
I
lucky
mean, I can't
person.
remember names that well, but I remember these sayings, right? And so I would I would write them down, I would collect them because they're so funny. And
Right.
I would when I would meet someone, this is the example I give. So I'd meet someone and say, "Well, where are you from?" And they say, "Oh, I'm Italian." And I say, "From where? I really want to know." And they would say, "Oh,
Right.
I'm from Napoli." And I could say, "Oh, does your grandmother call an elevator the tram of the wall?" You know, the
Is
Tramamura,
that a
yeah,
Naples thing?
yeah, and they would say,
Okay. The
"Who
wall
told
tram.
you
Yeah.
that? Who are you?" And so it was just such a great icebreaker, and so I developed this kind of theory of language learning that, it's almost better if there's a language that you have no hope of learning or even ordering lunch in, rather than
Okay.
spend a bunch of time when you visit a place to try to learn where's the train station. Just learn a really funny local proverb.
There you go.
What was the one you taught me on my part of the podcast?
It was either Chemut le Bighe.
So my friends from Friuli Venezia Giulia, if I came up to you, looking like and sounding like an American, and I said "Che mut le bige,"
Chemut le Bighe,
"Che
they
mut
would
le,"
laugh their
right? "Che
asses
mut le bige."
off.
It just is coming out of nowhere. Way better than "Hello, how are you? Good afternoon. Where's the train
Ciao,
station?"
buongiorno.
Right,
If you walked up to a winemaker in Friuli and you said "Chemut le Bighe," they would fall out of their chair.
or if
They
I
would
answered
love
back, if
that.
they said "Come stai?" and I said "Warm but floppy."
Yeah,
Right.
Chiao de ma flappe.
If you don't know
Chiao de
what we're talking about, you have to go to hear Wayne's interview on the Modo di Bere
Exactly,
podcast.
you're gonna have
Right.
to refer back.
So
Exactly.
basically, these friends of mine, it wasn't just that the wine was delicious. It wasn't just that the language was cool. It was the way that each person, and of course, these are people who were far away from home in New York, right? The
Okay.
pride that everybody had in his or her town to say, "Oh, my town has the best cake, and my town has the best rice, and my town has the best squash, my town has the best wine," and I found the variety to just be stunning. I had this idea of Italy as this boot-shaped outline on a map, and hanging out with actual Italians in New York where everyone was from somewhere different. It was like it zoomed in on the map, and it just brought this geographic reality of regional varied culture alive for me. And I want to say that Italy's special in that regard because of its history and because it's so varied. But the truth is, I've started applying this way of thinking to other places, and I'm finding that homogenization is just not true.
It's not
Like
true.
there are even in New York, there are people who can tell what block someone lives on because of their shoes. So to me, like that's terroir, this
Yeah,
idea of sense of
yeah.
place. And so I jumped into the river of wine. I became a sommelier with what is still my favorite certification from the Sommelier Society of America, where I now teach. And
Okay.
I said, "Okay, what am I gonna do with this wine career?" And so I tried different things. I worked retail, I did a little bit of restaurant still, and I, worked for several years as a sales rep and a writer of tech sheets for,
Okay.
an Italian and Austrian-focused importer, um,
In New
uh,
York.
in New York. So that gave me a chance to really connect with producers, because I was interviewing them. I was not just selling their wine and spending the day with them on what we would call a work with, where we would go to a bunch of different accounts. But I was interviewing them to tell their stories. I just found myself, though, loving talking to the farmers like that. I was able to interview a lot of those farmers in Italian eventually, and I loved that. I spent my honeymoon visiting the producers that I was working with.
I'm
You
sure
know,
your husband was really enthusiastic about
he
that.
was! He
He
loved
was.
it! Yeah,
That's so
he
nice that he
sorted
supports
Barbera
you.
grapes with me on the shaking table. Yeah, we made jo you know, they were all making jokes that we were gonna go back and pick the earwigs out of each other's hair because they sometimes leave bugs in there. Yeah, no, it was wonderful. It was, luckily, my husband and I we both have a lot of really overlapping interests. He's a huge
Great.
polyglot. He loves studying languages. And he's also just kinda down to do whatever makes me happy. Like, I think he probably enjoyed the, Italian vineyard vacation more than the Scottish country dancing,
Okay.
to be real. But he did that with me too. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, we had a lovely time. We didn't go to a single museum. It was completely agricultural. We didn't go to Florence. It was beautiful. We just were on farms, driving steep
Okay.
mountain roads, going to farms. Um, and I love that so much. I also studied, really hard these vineyards and everything, the same way I'd thrown myself into mixology. I learned
Mm.
everything I could. But I was a sales rep or a som in a restaurant. I wasn't that high on the ladder. You know, I wasn't getting taken on trips. So I put
Okay.
myself on that trip, you know what I mean? And the truth is, I hadn't been to a vineyard, you know?
Okay.
I was a
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
sommelier, I was doing all this cool Italian stuff. I was, you know, getting credentials in Italian wine, but I hadn't been to Italy, and I hadn't been to a vineyard, and
Wow.
I'd never been to a vineyard before.
Jeez.
I spoke Italian, you
Right.
know, people I was a bit of an enigma, right? And then I think there are a lot of service workers like that. And that's
Yeah.
who I have made Modo di Bere for on the industry side, is people like me who, um, you know, it's hard to learn from a map,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
or
Absolutely.
a history book. You know, we have all these very fat books. I like them, but they're hard to just sit and read,
Right.
right?
Right.
And it's a lot, and especially, listen, I love my sommelier cert, and I teach at a somm school, and I blind taste, but there's a lot of memorization involved when you're just trying to master every wine in the world in this kind of checking everything off way, and then I got to go on a wine trip, and
Uh-huh.
I tell you, I went to Piedmont first, and I was taken to this overlook. And, all day long, people had been showing me all the communes based on, like, all the castles, and,
Sure. Sure, sure.
"This is this river that you read about. This is this castle that you read about. This is this soil that you read about. Here, crumble it with your fingers." And I was just like, I felt so lucky. And we stood there
Yeah.
at this overlook, and it was the first time I was ever able to roll my R's. Like, I was like, "L'amore,"
Nice.
you know, like,
La
then
morra.
we went to Liguria, and we went to Sicily, and we went to Mount Etna, and it was wonderful to
Yeah.
see these wines and these, cultures that I love so much, and I really continued. I didn't think of it. I mean, my husband every once in a while will be like, "Someone should give you an honorary degree for this linguistic folk oral history research that you're doing." But I
Why
was just
not?
having fun, and I was just
Right.
making friends. But what I was doing was collecting this kind of loose lexicon of Modo di Dire from different regions and comparing them to each other. So I had a whole set. My biggest one was a collection of Modo di Dire about why you shouldn't drink the water, right? So, right, no, non bere l'acqua. So, things like l'acqua fa ruggine,
Okay. Yes, yes,
but
yes.
each place would have a different animal, a different dialect. So in Friulano, it was laghe e buine per crots. So the water is for frogs.
Yes,
Right. So
exactly.
see, I've got one for you. There you go.
There
And
you
then
go.
then I went to Venice and it was l'acqua marcisce pie. So like the water rots the boat poles.
Water
So
rots the poles.
so I
Yes.
got this sense of a local place from what
Okay.
words were chosen, from what agricultural products were part of these modo di dire, from, like they would tell you something about the culture. There's a lot of them about donkeys. And so but I was collecting these sayings and I just thought it was really cool. And that's what I was going to tell you. It was all right, a little bit of a formative moment. I was after the Tre Bicchieri fair. I went out with a bunch of lovely producers from Campania, and
Oh boy.
we went
Okay.
to a Song in Napoli, this pizza place, and I'm sitting here with these all these wine producers and then, some of the Tre Bicchieri, Gabbro Rosso guys. And, we're just laughing and having a good time. They find out about my thing, and then they start doing that, "Rose, say that to Gerard," like just and I was sort
Ah,
of mimicking things without being told what they meant. And there was this saying, it was um, I'm sure I won't get it exactly the same way, or it'll be different every neighborhood, but it was, "I'm a pers a flip cututere banare." And everyone was laughing so hard.
and so
And
what does that
it
mean?
and I
Translate that
finally
for
was
me.
like, "Tell me what it means." And it means they once they translated it, they said, "It means we have lost Philippe and all the baskets." And I just I started laughing. I was, like, screaming, crying. I was like, "Who is Philippe? And all the baskets?"
And
You know,
all the baskets,
right,
not
and
just some of the
and
baskets,
they said it's what
all
you
of the
say
baskets.
when really all hope is lost. And at the time, I was just like, "Oh, I find
That's
these
so
modo
funny.
de dire so delightful." And then
Right.
as time went on, I learned that there was actually a whole political history story about Philippe, the king, who would lower the bread baskets down for them. Then he went away, and then everybody was screwed. So there's just so much history and lore in there, and I just could not help but make the connection about the way that we talk about, a glass of wine
Yeah.
having the land, the history of hundreds of years of culture and agricultural practice, and that year of the sun, and how many flowers got rained on April 23rd. And it just the provenance of these sayings, and the the diversity of them, the variety of them, the variety of what people call dialects, but really they're
Mhm.
local languages.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, depending on where you're from, I feel like both with the indigenous grapes, honestly, and the local culture, the local language in the South, people are a lot more likely to preserve their thing. Whereas a lot, this is a generalization, but from the North, I'd meet people who were told, don't speak dialect, that's rude. Whereas, if you speak Sicilian, this is not to say that homogenization, globalization, the need to speak English has not caused a lot of these languages to become endangered.
Right.
And then
Right, right,
I'm
right.
going around with the wine producers who are showing me. I interviewed someone a few years ago in Valtellina, in actually not Valtellina, in Chiavenna, so in the Alps. This Ermal, this wonderful producer, and there are these regions where um, people have just left because of not having work in
Right.
different
Right,
decades,
right, right.
and
Like
the
Carnia
vineyards,
here in Friuli. Yeah.
yeah, the vineyards get overgrown, and
Okay.
and now people are redeeming these steep hillside vineyards and doing this work, and with such dedication. And oh, the grapes. I have to tell you, we're still getting it's taking a while to get to how Friuli Venezia Giulia gave me the idea for Modo di Bere, my work now, my media project. But, when I was there, last year, I interviewed Emilio Buffon. That visit that I got to do as the wine journalist that I've now become, I must have done one of the last interviews with him.
I'm sure.
Um, yeah, so I have filmed a season of my travel show, Modo di Bere TV, in, Friuli Venezia Giulia and Slovenia, and, his family was the first interview that we did, and they opened up all these bottles of much rarer indigenous grapes than the ones that we spoke about in your interview on my podcast when, Chalyin and, just so many rare, just bottle after bottle after bottle, and
Uchelut.
Uchelut, yes,
Uchelut,
yeah, no,
yes.
they gave me a book. Okay, so for our audio listeners here, I'm holding up this book,
Okay.
about the indigenous vines, the Picolit Neri and the yeah, Emilio Buffon gave me this book of these extremely Chalyin
Yes.
and, yeah, Uchenut.
Fumat.
Yes, oh, look, oh my god, look, there's a leaf in the
Aw, that you
so
you stuck in there.
well, no, he did. This was their book that was in their tasting room, and they just gave it to me so I could keep
Wow.
learning about, Fumat, Pignola, Ribolanera, Tazelenge, and, as I was tasting these, we were talking about the reverse, right? About a grape in the podcast you did on the Modo di Bere show. We were talking about the reverse, about a grape that got so popular that people overcropped it, oversold it, made a mass-produced version of it that didn't do it justice. And sometimes the really rare indigenous grapes, well, it's true that a lot of times the reason they fell out of favor was because they were more difficult to farm,
Of course.
right?
Of course.
The story I think that got told was, and maybe winemaking, maybe there was a difficulty where there was something that was difficult, at least at a certain time. But I think there was a thing said, "Oh, well, those grapes must not have made very good wine, or we would have cared about them." You know?
Mhm.
And I and
Right.
and I would even hear that a little bit from some of the producers who are working with the indigenous grapes now, like, "Oh, well, those grapes, maybe they went out of favor for a reason," right? And it's true that there are some grapes that are more elegant or exciting than others, but for a lot of cases, um, it's really how we treat them, and, whether we take the time. It's kinda like kids, you know? Like, you
Yes.
gotta take the
I
time.
always make that
Everybody's
same yes.
different, and
Yep.
you can't just put everyone into the same system and expect everyone to thrive. You've gotta take
Exactly.
each person
Very beautifully said.
and see, like, what do you bring to the world, Jamie? You know? Like, you've gotta get down and you gotta listen, and that's
Yeah.
what these producers, oh, I'm gonna cry, who and he opened these bottles of these forgotten wines,
Yeah.
and he opened them all for me. Who am I? My baby journalist. I mean,
Right.
obviously, I care a lot. I think they could tell that I was going to share
They're
this,
pretty savvy when it comes to that. Yeah.
but they opened them all for me, dozens of bottles, and they were as elegant and complex and age-worthy and exciting as any famous grape I've ever tasted in my not so short career.
Okay.
And I was so verklempt, just overwhelmed,
Mhm.
that if it wasn't for Amelia Buffon doing something that everyone thought was crazy and focusing on these grapes that no one cared about, that everyone thought were bad, um, those
Right.
flavors would have been gone from the world.
Of course. Of course.
And with your local dialect, you beautiful Italians, or whoever you are, with your local language, your tribal language, with your indigenous language, with your patois, like,
Right.
those are so important too. And I started to think about the people who work to preserve and conserve those languages, and they started to feel to me like the same people. And I know a
Okay.
lot more about wine than I do about linguistics, right? Um,
Okay.
but
Okay,
I
okay.
want starting Modo di Bere and bringing these two concepts together, the local wine and the local language, to talk
Mhm.
about how biodiversity of the plants that we drink specifically and the linguistic variety of the local language, about how those two things are, you know, they really connect. And after talking to some people about this, as I have now been able to create the opportunity to do, I have
Right.
learned that the people who are now working on linguistic diversity were directly influenced by environmentalists working on species extinction.
Interesting.
It's
Very
not
interesting.
something that I thought, "Hey, these things are kind of similar." The fields are connected, and
Mhm.
so I feel that, this cultural picture of what I'm really that really makes me wanna change my life and learn all these new skills and, I could have done something else. Um,
Exactly.
right, but I just I was on a trip. Okay, now we're gonna get to the story 30 minutes in of why Modo di Bere started in Friuli Venezia Giulia. So, I
Okay.
in 2022, I had left my distributor job, and I was a bit adrift. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do next. I did ask myself, "Well, Rose Thomas, what if there were no limits, what would you have wanted to do with that sommelier certification?" And I said, "I wanna be a writer. We've always wanted to be a writer," you know? And I was like, "No, no, that's too hard. We tried that, you know,
Okay.
come
Okay,
on." So I was
okay.
feeling close-minded. It was the pandemic, Um, I wasn't and, I had with my music career, I had the experience of, creating the infrastructure for my own opportunities, which, there's 2 different ways you can feel about that, right? Like, if you're feeling shut out of a structure, which, a lot of people are, you can feel aggrieved, or you can be
Okay.
like, "No, I love doing things my own way." And I had really learned with music that I was so much happier when I would just forget what was supposed to happen or the way that things were supposed to happen or the breaks that I was supposed to get, and I would just
Right.
make things happen. And
Right.
people would be like, "Wow, how did you do that?" And I was like, "I just, had an event." So I was thinking about doing some writing and I was just feeling a little tired, I was a little burnt out.
Mm.
I was, in a little bit of a low point with what I was working on, but I decided, that I wanted to do some writing of some kind. I knew that much. And I got invited to Venetili. And
Oh, okay.
I got invited to do a wine gig in Verona around Venetili time in 2022. And the Colioberta people did a joint event
Okay.
promoting their shared history of those 2 cross-border regions, and I got to go to it. I got to go to this dinner that they put on. I got to taste, the oldest bottle from the first vintage at Cletberta, and,
Okay.
I sat next to someone who worked with Francesco, who works with Grattasciutta, the
Okay.
producer there in Collio, and, I
Okay.
had some time, I did suddenly get invited to Italy, and I thought, "Something will happen. I'll figure out
Of
my
course.
next move,"
Yep.
I
Yep.
love traveling alone. When I was a bartender and therefore a psychologist, when people came in with some existential problem, I would say, "Go on vacation by yourself." So I knew that this would work for me. I just didn't know what was gonna happen. So I thought, "Whatever, I'm just gonna be friendly. I'm gonna go have fun in Italy, and, maybe some Italian company will hire me for something." I
Yeah.
was still thinking in terms of a job,
Right. Right.
and not letting myself be the creative entrepreneur that I've really always been. So I met other people though who were in town who had their own magazines and started their own thing, and I was like, "Oh,
Okay.
hey, you're doing that. That sounds fun." And it was really funny because I had this business card that was actually really cool. It was like my music headshot, and it just said, "Rose Thomas Bannister, songwriter, sommelier." So I was a
That's a unique business
mystery,
card.
right? And, wine can
Right.
be very stuffy. Everyone's kind of in a dark blue blazer. I've got my hat that I usually wear, and I have this enigmatic business card. Nobody really knows where to place me. And so,
Right.
I was handing that around, and, they invited me. They invited me to come to Colio and to Berta,
Cool.
and
Cool.
I had left some
Who
time.
invited you? Who
Francesco
invited
from
you?
Grattasciutta said,
From
"Come,"
Grattasciutta. Okay.
and
Okay.
he
Okay.
set up my appointments for me. He didn't really know who I was or what I was doing, but I was at that dinner and I said I'd like to go. So he took the
Okay.
trouble to gather, an itinerary. I saw Grattasciutta, of course, but I also spoke with, Primozic, um,
Okay.
and,
Marco's a good friend.
oh, he's lovely, and Carlo Di
Nice
Pratis,
guy.
so I spoke to David, and Ferdinand. Oh gosh, I'm probably leaving someone out, and I went to Cletberta as well, that was wonderful, and so both sides of the border, and it was really about that kinda shared history, and I love that story, it was so interesting, but the story really starts on the way there because I'd never driven in Italy. My husband did all the driving on my honeymoon, and
Okay.
it wasn't that I was really so scared to drive, Wayne, it was that a trip to Italy right after COVID that I didn't have to get the plane ticket for sounded like such a good gift, and I was feeling so low in my sense of possibility that I developed this little hang up that I actually might die in a car accident, as if I
Oh,
would get,
no.
like, struck by lightning for having too much fun, And,
Right.
I don't know. It wasn't too serious, but it was kind of in the back of my mind, honestly. I don't think I have, like, OCD or anything, but it was weird. It was weird. I was
And
not in a good place.
Italy is not the best place to sort of assuage that kind of fear because
Oh,
they do like to drive erratically and quickly
well,
here.
it wasn't completely irrational, and I knew the kind of driving that I would have to do to go to vineyards, right? And at that
Okay,
time,
of
I didn't
course.
know that I was visiting Collier, where the driving's actually quite easy comparatively to some of the other places I've been. I was
Right.
leaving it open. I didn't know which place I was gonna go visit. I was gonna take a little wine trip. So I knew I'd have to drive. So, yeah, I guess it wasn't completely irrational. But the truth is I was just a bit nervous. And then I got my rental car. The car was speaking to me in French. It was out of washer fluid, it was low on oil, all of the bells were dinging. Um,
Oh, shit.
I couldn't understand the scratchy voice in the toll gate speaker, and then finally I didn't know what to do, I couldn't figure out where to put my card, and finally I started crying, and I was just like, "Non capisco," and then they just opened it and let
They
me go,
just
and I
let you
probably had to
go.
pay for the whole toll road. Um, but you know what? I turned the car there was a turn, I was entering Colio and these
Mhm.
beautiful rolling hills, and the landscape opened up, and I realized that I was not going to die, and
Nice.
my anxiety and all of the terror of COVID and my career woes just melted away, and I thought, "Oh, look where I am." I could feel the joy. I let myself feel the joy, which Italy is
Nice.
very good for being like, "You're having a problem having fun? Like, we're here to have
Let
fun. What is
let
life
us show
for?"
you.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
And, that's very good for me. That's very good for me and how I was brought up. So I just love the joy and the commitment to enjoying life. Is another thing that I just love about Italy so much. And I just relaxed, and I started having fun, and I realized I was gonna get to go and do my favorite thing, which is talk to farmers. And
Nice.
I thought, "You know, I'm gonna start a blog or something." Very modest idea,
Okay.
but then I thought, "Well, okay, but there's a lot of" so I opened the door a little bit, and then I was like, "Okay, well, there's a lot of wine blogs. What's my thing gonna be?" And I thought,
Right.
"Well, what if I did something with the dialect, with the Modo di Dire?" And then I came up with this pun of Modo di
Modo di
Bere. So
Bere.
Modo di Dire,
Exactly.
Modo di Bere, and if you're not Italian, if you don't speak Italian, it probably doesn't mean anything. But typically, the Italians I've spoken to can tell I'm talking about both sayings and drinking.
Yeah.
And I just was so thrilled, Wayne, with the pun that I had made. And
You picked it up and ran with it.
I thought, oh, and I said it out loud in the rental car. I said, "That's a good idea." I'm gonna do that. And it just
Okay.
started to blossom in my mind immediately, and I thought, "Oh, it should be a podcast," and I could go and I could talk to people, and I showed up, and it was I guess it was, Robert from Gratitude. And,
Okay.
I have my notebook. I was doing this work of an investigator, of a journalist, of an oral historian this whole time, right? I was. And but he says to me, "Oh, Francesco tells me you're a journalist." And I was like,
Right.
"Yes, I am. Here's
Yes,
my
I
notebook.
am.
Let's start the interview." And I had decided I was a journalist like 10 minutes before.
Before that.
And you know what, Wayne? I never stopped. From that moment on, I went from feeling very low confidence in my career and my place in the world to just, I have an idea. I have a great idea. I love my idea. Let's go. And
Right.
I interviewed people in Italian, which I'd done before, but
Right.
I was by myself, no one to possibly help me. And
Okay.
it was great. I understood everything that was being said. I was like, "Whoa, I can do this." Each of the different producers helped me put all the different fluids in my rental car. You know what it was is I wanted to share these wonderful wine travel experiences that I could access as a wine student
Okay.
and a wine professional. Th I those were not something I took for granted. They were very special to me, and I realized that as fun as it was to talk to all the top wine buyers and somms in New York about the really cool producers that I was selling, and to just talk to people at this really high level of education all the time. What I really wanted was to reach people like the person I was in Nebraska and in
Mhm.
Iowa, trying to buy something good from a state-run liquor store.
Okay.
And I just feel that, wine has not had its Food Network moment, right? Like, it has not
Yeah.
become a part of our lives the way that Wagyu beef has and all these fancy cakes that we watch on the Bake Off show, and I think it's because it's difficult. People don't know what this tastes like from looking at it. If I bite
Right.
into a big juicy hamburger, they can guess what I'm tasting. It's easier to visually represent. For wine, you really have to have the right communicator, so that's one thing. I think the other thing too is that it's been this luxury item and this flex, and you've either got a TV show that's about studying for a really hard test or,
Mhm.
celebrities running around in sports cars, kind of swanning around in chateaus, drinking the most famous brands. And,
Bordeaux's and all that sort of stuff.
listen,
Yeah.
those wines are great. I wouldn't shake a stick at anything on those shows. I'd be happy to taste it all, you
Right.
know.
But
Uh, but there I have always been about the underdog. I was just interested in people who needed my help,
right.
and
Right, right.
I wanted to share that with people, and so, I was focused on the podcast, so kind of working part-time in some service jobs, but with just a moneymaker. I was pushing for my idea. So, yeah, anyway, I had a wonderful time in Friuli Venezia Giulia. I came home, continued to just blaze towards my idea
Mhm.
and, of starting Modo di Bere, and then, I met this cinematographer who loves food and
Okay.
wanted to do more documentary work, especially around
Gotcha.
food and bev, and she had done a lot of work with that in terms of, like, the branding and marketing as a videographer, and she wanted to do more, like, documentary travel work, and
Mhm.
yeah, and she was basically like, "Okay, well, let's go do, Anthony Bourdain for one." She met me, we filmed kind of a pilot for the show in Jackson Heights, which is on my YouTube channel, um, and we loved working together. I loved what she did. We loved traveling together. We loved eating together. And she loved the way that I would talk to people and the way that people would
Right.
talk to me,
Right, right.
and bring me into their worlds, and because I wanted to learn. And we went to Italy just a few months later. We went to Valtellina and then
Mhm.
we went to Texas and filmed a season
Texas.
about Texas wine, which is wonderful. And then we were invited to document this Indigenous Peoples Day trail ride in the Navajo Nation that was put on by this artist, Elmer Yazzie. So we filmed that. That was incredible. And then we went to Calabria and did. So we make these regional wine documentaries. We went to Calabria. We went to Friuli Venezia Giulia in Slovenia. This year we went to Piemonte. We went to the Dolomites to Sud Tyrol. We filmed kind of one-off episodes in Rome and in Venice. And because of the whole Nigerian wine story, because of the whole Nigerian story that I told in the interview that you did on my show,
Right.
we went to Nigeria and filmed with someone about palm wine.
Wow.
So yeah, so basically we filmed and then we went to the Finger
So
Lakes.
yeah. So would you define yourself as more of a travel podcast than a wine podcast? It seems to be.
I think it is travel because I think that but it is travel in the sense that the show's always been about local culture. But it's
Mhm.
been about the way that, this glass of wine and this tiny piece of language can open up an entire history of a people and a place and all the
Right.
plants and the stones. Something like, if you are familiar and if you live there, like when I went to Locanda de Vitac,
Right.
and I thought, "This restaurant has terroir." Like, this restaurant owner is telling me my family's been here for hundreds of years. So, you hear the winemaker 6 generations. Oh my god, I mean, it's so amazing,
Yeah.
and so it is a local culture project. It is an oral
Mm.
history project. It is a biodiversity, it's a climate project. But yeah, I think that I would describe the show as a travel show, but it's a wine and language travel show.
Okay.
And the thing is, we're doing it all at this point without any support. We just kind of made it happen. Haven't quite had the resources and time and team that I need to do the post-production. So I thought we would have
Oh.
3 or 4 seasons out by now, and because we keep traveling and because I'm trying to build the whole business and we've got the podcast and everything else, um, we just haven't, put the show out yet. I mean, we're gonna put it out just on YouTube. We're just gonna put it on YouTube, but the truth is, there's all of these fancy, production companies now who are developing just go straight to YouTube. That's where everyone
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm really thrilled about that. I think there's some really great possibilities in terms of translated subtitles on YouTube that I'm excited
Mhm.
about and just
Right.
really reaching people. I'd love to do subtitles in Spanish. I'd love to do subtitles in Mandarin. I'm adding a Spanish podcast next year, which is very exciting. But yeah, so we are going to be doing a fundraiser, a big
Okay.
fundraiser, which we're planning to launch in February and we're going to do it like a March Madness style bracket style tournament. So we're
Okay.
hoping people come back week after week to donate and vote on which
Okay.
season will make it to the finals and win the fundraiser to be
Okay.
aired first. So if you guys want
Okay.
Friuli Venezia Giulia, our show with
Yeah.
interviews with
Let's push
Emilia
that hard,
Buffon and
guys.
Paolo Rodaro and some people from Slovenia as well, from Dušica Šibau, wonderful producer, lovely interview. Chotar, we interviewed. So we went back to Gradišuta, we went back to Ferdinand. We spoke to a Slovenian linguist who is making a dictionary of winemaking terms across dialects all across
Wow.
Slovenia.
Wow.
So, and we talked to Movia, we talked to Radicon. So I have that season. I have the footage. It's in a hard
Right.
drive right over there. And I just need a little help. I need a little help paying people. I need a little help paying for musicians and map designers, and I just need a little help. I need to. I was
Yeah.
able to squeak through to do these trips. Although eventually we will be hoping to get some kind of, I don't know, a cheese sponsor. We're
There
gonna
you go.
need more
Get
support.
Montasio to bankroll you.
Oh, that would
Yeah.
be great. We're gonna need more support in terms of the actual filming to be able to
Right.
sustain these kinds of trips that we've been doing. But, for the post-production, it's time to grow up and develop the skill that I did to learn podcasting and filmmaking and everything else so I could tell
Right.
these wine stories, where you did develop that skill of fundraising as well. When I fundraise for a few $1,000s here and there for music projects over the years, but this is, films is a whole other thing. So, but we're hoping to get some writers from different places. Maybe you can write something to write pieces in the
Why
magazine
not? Why
about
not?
why these places are so special and why you should vote for this season. So it's gonna be kind of a takeover.
I'm happy to
Yeah.
advocate for Friuli.
Yeah, so it's gonna be kind of a takeover of my whole
Yeah.
platform. So we've got the magazine, we've got the podcast, we've got the social media, short form videos, and then the show that's in the works. But you can watch the trailer if you go to so I have 2 YouTube channels. One has the podcast with all the
Right.
kind of Italian wine playlists and everything. That's at Modo di Bere podcast on YouTube. But
Okay.
then I have at Modo di Bere, which is our YouTube channel, and you can go there and you can see the trailer and you can see what I
Okay.
have been talking about. So that's my big, 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 big project that I've been talking and talking and talking
You
about
you
and that
sound
nobody's
like a
seen
very
yet.
busy woman.
Yeah. No, well, I'm very happy, and I wasn't letting myself let my creative flag fly. I didn't feel hopeful about it.
Right.
But people are listening, people are finding the project. I've had some just unbelievable travel experiences. That feeling that I had driving into Friuli Venezia Giulia, just being like, oh my God, I'm here right now, has now
Right.
happened time after time because I'm doing this project. And I love sharing these stories with people, and I'm having a great time. And I got the wine enthusiast recognition this year, even though the project's still so
Congratulations.
new. So,
Very nice.
they chose me to be on their list, their Future 40 list. So, people are finding out about the
Fantastic.
project. And yeah, that's my story, Wayne. Sorry I didn't let you ask that
It's
many
a
questions.
it's a yeah, really. I've actually run out of questions. I don't have any.
Did I answer them or did I just take the time?
Oh, well, I would the only thing that I would really wanna ask you about that we haven't really touched on was just a little bit more specifics on your experiences drinking and traveling in Friuli, like, people you've thrown out a few names, like
Mhm,
Rodaro
mhm.
obviously is somebody who I've interviewed, and Emilio Buffon is another guy, obviously very important figure here who I unfortunately never got to interview. But I mean, just sort of some of your impressions. I love your story about coming into Collio and being like relaxed. And I totally feel that. I get that. I totally understand that feeling, especially that moment of transition when I was working here and I was walking to go to the winery in the morning. It was about a 1 kilometer walk from where I was sleeping to where I was working. And this unbelievably pure silence in the vineyards and this sense of peace and this quality of life that you have here. So tell me a little bit more about some of your wine experiences here in Friuli, memorable ones or grapes or wines that you fell in love with. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, my friend Paul Balke,
Yeah.
who we've both interviewed, he told me that in the different Freelian languages, there are extra words for blue because of the beautiful blue sky
Yep.
that you have there. And then when I was over on the Berta side, I was taught some sayings about the types of sunsets that you would have. I think I
Uh-huh.
was in Schmartno, so it's this overlook where you see this kind of bowl, and they would say, "When the Friulian woman raises her skirt, it's gonna rain," or something like that, but it was a description of what type of sunset there is. So I would say
Wow.
landscape-wise, it is, yes, the rolling hills, but also the beautiful sky. It's so pretty there and is a
Okay.
very, very peaceful. Um, there was a spot when I was filming with Lara from Palo Rodaro. She
Mhm.
took us to meet her woolly pigs.
Yes. The
Have you been?
Mangalitse.
Oh, that's a wonderful place to visit.
Yep.
In their home, they have this artist who painted these Modo di Dire on the walls, like these
On the
frescoes.
walls.
It's amazing. And
Yeah.
so she took us out in her truck to see this beautiful, like natural preserve, but also the hills. And she mentioned that a lot of photographers had come to take vineyard postcard, National Geographic type shots there. So I have this moment where Amelia, my filmmaking partner, camera woman, partner on the show, she was filming out the side of the truck, but I also have a little iPhone shot of just you could see the vineyards wrapping around the hills and going. So just absolutely beautiful. I think the experience of, crumbling the ponca
Ooh,
in
yeah.
my hands, which I've now done in the vineyards with several different producers, and learning about the ponca. And I think the thing about wine travel that I really love is that when you visit, person after person after person, and the first person tells you something, and then the second farmer, the second winemaker will reiterate this fact, and then you hear it's usually something about history. In this case, it was Collio means Berta, and Berta means Collio, and it
Mhm.
was this story about, the war and the treaty and the border that was drawn, and these people who were separated from their family, and, they would end up speaking different languages, and that whole story, and I found that to be so fascinating and moving, but each producer would tell me again, and so by the time you've tasted all the wine, you're full of these flavors, and you've tasted some different wines, you've been able to see what different winemakers do. Like, oh, I love
Mhm.
the orange wines, the skin tuck wines. The first tasting that I had of those, that was really devoted to that was the Primo Seach. So I hung out with
Okay.
Marco.
Sure.
Um, I interviewed him in Italian. He's so lovely. He showed me all the old bottles in his
Yes.
winery of
Yes.
the older bottles, uh, and he showed me the well for the pozzo in
Okay.
the winery that helped with the humidity, and I think just, like, hanging out with David at Carlo di Pratis and hanging out with his dog, and his dog is named Bora after
Of
the
course.
wind,
Of
and,
course.
just there's this way of connecting with the land. It's so wonderful everywhere you go to meet winemakers, but I really loved hearing people talk about their families. I think there have been some really greats in wine history, who have recently passed away in the last decade or so. So people talking about their forebears and the legacy that they've inherited. And I think hanging out at Radicon and
Yeah.
hearing them talk about their father. And also I think being there in Radicon and looking out and seeing these peaceful hills and being understanding that being told that the land was lower after the war, the
Yes.
land itself, and I guess this makes sense because we know that the hills can kind of crumble away, right? But just
Well,
it's still
they
just
just got
so they
they
just
got
blew.
bombarded into flatness. Yes.
Yeah, and to be at Locanda David talk. So for me, it was the World War One history too.
Yeah.
And, to be at Locanda Deve Talk and the multicultural shifting border, to be with Nina and Lon in Movia, to say, "Okay, so, our family's been here. In this decade, the border was here, and we were this country, and then it was over here, and we were this country, and then it was over here." Same story at Locanda Deve Talk. They were Tatiana was
Yep.
talking about, like, her grandmother, her great-grandmother, I whichever generation it was, she was sent away because the war was being fought right there,
Right.
and, she was speaking Slovenian, and she was in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and she came back, new language, paying for things in lira, "Okay, you're Italian now."
Right.
And
Right.
I
Right.
was
Right.
telling you, kind of a funny, awkward story before we started about, we were talking about audio production because we both have a podcast. And I was talking about how I tell people not to hit the microphone or slam the table because it
Okay.
causes
Right. Yeah.
problems.
Yeah.
I do this kind of wink, wink thing about, I tend not to get too into Italian stereotypes. That's annoying, but I'll say, hey, I interview a lot of Italians, so I have to tell everybody, "Don't talk with your hands." Usually I'll get a little smile from that, but, Augustine from Locanda David Talk, who's in the Slovenian-speaking minority, in Italy, who wasn't treated well, and of course, didn't never asked to be Italian. He said
Right.
he just no laugh. He said, "We are not Italian." You know,
It's true. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
that people talk about it, and that's something that I think, really struck me. But then, of
Okay.
course, you've just got all these lovely, sweet people
Yeah.
who are making Tokai Friulano and eating frico.
You
Like,
know,
what a good time.
everybody calls people from Friuli, they call them cold.
That
Now,
doesn't make any sense to me.
I am so happy that you said that because that is something that I have never found here at all. But if you ask Friulians about themselves, they say, "Yeah, we're a little bit cold," right? But the idea has always been that maybe on the outside, they have a hard shell that you have to carve your way through.
I don't know.
And
I
then
like a cold
once you
customer. I make people warm up to me pretty fast, but that was not my experience.
totally not.
Yeah.
And I think and somebody once told me too, it's because you're not Italian. It's
Mm,
because you're
fair enough. Yeah.
exotic, right? So,
That is an
so that's why
advantage that
people
we have.
warm up to
Yeah.
you. But I've never, I mean, from the first weeks that I've been here, I've got invited to dinner and people were taking care of me and looking after me, So I never got this idea that Friulani are cold. I think it's sort of related to the place because they think it's because it's northern Italy. It's just a cold place, but I've never found that they're cold at all. I've always found them incredibly warm and welcoming and friendly. And you might have to get past sort of a little hurdle, but once you get past that initial diffidence, little hardness on the outside, they're the warmest, most wonderful people you can meet.
Well, I have a Modo di Dire about that story about that actually.
Give it to me.
So I was hanging out with Ilaria Faluga at her winery with her enologist. Oh, Alessandro, do you know?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
Alessandro Sandrine.
So I'm with Ilaria Faluga at her winery, with her enologist, Alessandro,
Right.
and they just spent hours with me. We tasted from the tank. We stood and just talked to each other about how everything tasted, and then they fed me beautiful ham,
Of
and,
course.
we just spent so much time together. They gave me that bottle of Verduzzo that I just opened this week,
Right.
and, of course, I say, "Hey, here's my notebook. Will you teach me a modo di dire?" As I do. And, he taught me maybe you've heard this, hopefully I pronounce it correctly, lascini come chance.
Ah, okay. Okay, okay.
Okay, so it's a thing you say when you say goodbye,
Right.
and he told me it means, "Let's leave each other like dogs." And,
Yes.
okay, so normally in Italian a dog is not a good thing. You say "fa freddo cane," or
Okay,
the cane
esatto.
is part of the bestemmia, like it's a strong negative word, And so
Exactly.
when he said a saying, and he says, "Let's leave each other like dogs," I thought it meant, "Let's screw each other over," right? Or something like
Okay.
that. Like, it seemed to me to be a saying of doing something nasty. And it wasn't clear that it meant something you say when parting, and he said, "No, it means let's kiss each other a lot as we say
Really?
goodbye," because, like, dogs, like,
Ah.
kind of sniffing each other, like, like, kiss, 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 kiss. And it was so the opposite of, what I assumed the saying meant. So that's my experience with Friulians is
Well, now my
lascini
experience with
comichians. Yeah.
exactly. Now my experience with that, and it comes from friends, not from winemakers, but from friends, but also from that, YouTube series, Tech Columns, that you have to watch. Is, when you say goodnight, you basically say in Friulano, it's like, "You're not gonna leave us like a dog," which means, you know, "Don't leave now, we have to have another drink." It's
Oh, okay.
okay,
Okay,
and
so
that's
maybe I'm
that's
wrong.
been my experience, like, "You don't leave
Well,
us like dogs."
okay, so maybe my initial guess was right. Now, I will say this has happened to me before, and you gotta understand too that I'm doing this linguistic research where I'm taking a primary source and I'm believing what they say.
Right,
And,
right, right.
so I have definitely had that experience where I've learned a saying and I say it to somebody else and they say, "That's not right." There are also certain times that I'm making a guess about something and it's not quite right,
Okay.
you know? Um,
Right, right.
but, like, for instance well, a good example is, in Italian, u una gatta frettolosa fa i gattini ciechi. So a stressed cat gives birth to
Yes,
blind kittens, and
exact that's
I j
cute.
I love it. So I take it as kind of a travel thing, Like, to me, I thought it just meant, well, don't get so stressed out. It's not
You're
gonna
gonna make
help.
mistakes. Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I didn't think of it as making mistakes. I thought of it as like, what are you gonna do? Kind of. And it helped me. Like, it was like traveling, the train's canceled, I'm lost. I'm like, well, don't get stressed out. It's not gonna help. And to
It's
that,
not
that
gonna
that was to me something kind of Italian, like like chill out, like something like that. Like they're not too uptight or something like that. And then I
right.
kind of realized that it probably meant more of a haste makes waste. Like you'll make mistakes kind of thing.
Right.
So
Right.
sometimes I'm kind of putting my own guess or my own interpretation or what I think something might mean. So it's not always what one person tells me in a pub is what I know
Right.
about the saying. So I haven't done a survey. I haven't spent like you so much time. I'm so happy for you that you've been so happy that you've spent so much time in this beautiful place. Yeah, the wine is wonderful. I would tell people if you like to do wine travel, if you've been to Tuscany, um, I like to say that Friuli Venezia Giulia is like chill white wine Tuscany. It's a
Yeah.
bit of a
Chill white wine
simplification,
Tuscany.
but it's
Yeah,
it's very relaxed, but there's still definitely structure there for you to go and visit wineries,
for
wonderful
sure.
restaurants, amazing food, lovely little hotels, and delicious wine. And I would say too that the
Do you have a favorite dish that you tried here in Friuli? Is there something that's because I know I
ooh,
always say there were three things that kept me in Friuli. The first one was the wine. The second one was my wife, and the third one was Frico.
yeah, it was Francesco from Gratitude. He had me taste a Frico, and I drank it with Gratitude's Cabernet Franc. I
Oh,
love
okay.
that wine. So it's kind of that experience. Oh, I'll tell you a food moment. I have so many. There is a little restaurant. Okay, so I was at this little restaurant, this wonderful farm to table place, and uh, I had a a bottle of. Oh, it was so good. I
Now
must have taken a
I
lot
want
of
to know what
pictures.
it is now. I'm super intrigued.
Trattoria agli Antenati
Ante
in
Nante. Okay.
okay, and it was in San Lorenzo Isontino.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so at this lovely, highly recommended Trattoria agli Antenati,
Ante Nante. Yes.
uh, I had a 2016 Mastri Vinai Bressan Rosantico.
Okay.
So this
Rosatico.
Rosantico, like romantico, but
Okay.
Rosantico, and it's a
Okay.
skin contact wine from Bressan,
Okay.
with the prosciutto di San Daniele. No, it was Osvaldo.
Prosciutto
I
di
think it
Osvaldo.
I think it was
Uh-huh.
Osvaldo. I think
Probably.
it was Osvaldo and the Bressan, and
Okay.
that was I okay, you want a little, like, really local moment here?
Yes.
Okay, so the chef was so wonderful. I made him because I know from experience you don't get to taste every vintage of every bottle that you open at a restaurant, right? So,
Right.
the pairing was so good. I made him come over and take a bite with us. Like, I was just like, "You have to taste this." So, he
You
came
got
over
to
and
taste this.
yeah, so he came over and tried it with me. Um, I've got the menu here, I think I can confirm. Yes, it was Osvaldo. And,
Okay.
yeah, I'm just looking at my iPhone here so that I can remember these wonderful details. And, it was one of those amazing dark kind of orange wines with some age on it, with the
Right.
Osvaldo prosciutto. It was so good. And then I was just really in the moment. It's not even that I was, like, drunk, I was just full of pleasure.
Yeah.
I told this story about me being so repressed, but it's not my natural state, right? That's why I like Italy so much. That's why Italy likes me. And there was this toast.
Italy brings that out of you,
Yeah,
and Friuli brings that out of you. Yeah.
it does, even the North, like it's all so much more pleasurable than whatever my childhood in Nebraska, you know. And so but the toast where they slam the glass on the table.
Right.
a bit vulgar. But eh, can I swear on your show?
Of course you can.
Okay, so
We're all adults here.
It's chi non bate non spate. So basically, if you don't tap the glass on the table before the toast, you won't get
You don't
laid,
get
let's
laid.
say.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
Exactly.
I was so keen to show how up I was on the local customs. I took one of those beautiful Radicon designed orange wine glasses that I was drinking my quite nice bottle of wine in.
And you broke it.
I broke it. Yeah, because I was doing the toast.
Think. Okay.
I will say I ran into that guy in Italy and tried to commiserate and laugh at myself over the story. And he said, "No, you didn't." So now he was gracious about it. He was like, "That didn't happen." But now I've made it part of the public record. No, there's also, what is that dish that they have with the kind of it's like like a deep fried omelet with ham inside, like an omelet burrito. It's I think it's a Slovenian dish,
the
maybe?
Lubyanska.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that actually, Matthias Chaturchik, the winemaker at Ferdinand,
Who I interviewed for the Berda episodes.
oh, yeah, isn't he lovely?
He's a great guy.
I love his
Great guy.
wines, and I visited him twice. And he also visited me in New York. We had Chinese food together.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, no, lovely, lovely guy, lovely family. Their winery is beautiful.
Yeah.
Definitely want to just hang out there by their pool and drink. Oh, you know what? Actually, that's a nice moment. That was on my first trip in 2022. He felt so bad because he was waiting for me, which is just karma, because it is really hard to stay on schedule when you're driving around seeing a bunch of wineries. I try really hard, but you
Always.
get lost.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to not be 20 minutes, 20 or more late for these
Well,
appointments.
15 minutes is always acceptable.
Yeah. Well, I'm good.
15.
So people have waited
So if you're
for
20
me.
minutes late, you're really only 5 minutes late.
Well, so he had waited for me. I had to wait for him. He had to do something. Something had happened. And he felt so bad. But you know what I did? He left me with I think it was the Rosato. I guess I refuse to say rosé. It was the Rosato Sine Finis.
Okay.
And they've got a beautiful view of gorgeous, that bowl-shaped valley there in Berta. And it's really interesting. You kind of cross over, and there's sort of more vineyards still on the Berta
Yeah.
side, but then it's just more rural, pastoral overall, where
Right.
so there's also, where there aren't as many houses, there are the cherry trees. And both times I visited were in the spring with the cherry trees blooming.
With cherries. Yep.
And so there's these blossoms, and then the vineyards. Oh, it's lovely there. And so,
Yeah.
and I sat there and watched the beautiful perlage, the bollicine. Here I am using a French term. But in my Rosato, the perlage of my Rosato. And I was just listening to the wonderful soundscape of roosters and dogs barking and chainsaws and the occasional like motorbike that I just associate with the
Scooter.
Italian countryside, and there was kind of an echo, it was this kind of echoing off the hills. So that was really beautiful. I also enjoyed a really lovely meal at an old hotel, which I won't try to Google, but it was in Gorizia. It was kind of a beautiful, classy old restaurant attached to the hotel that I stayed in
Okay.
Isonzo. And I had there's so much cheese. I think it was is there a dish
cheese and pig? Cheese and pig.
Is there a dish that's called like a nest, like a nido? That's like, there's some kind of nested cheese. I just remember feeling like I had a bowl of cheese. I was just dipping the, so there's a lot of wonderful cheese and potatoes, and I think the food's delicious. The wine really stands up to it well. I've had the pleasure of, spending a few days there 2 times. And I like I said, I'm about halfway through my Italy regional bingo card. I've been to 10 or 11 different regions. I'm pretty keen on learning more always, and just moving forward.
That's the key.
And so the fact that I returned to this region that I chose to bring, if I go on my own, it's a little easier, right? But if we're going to shoot the
Hmm.
documentary series, like that's a commitment,
Yeah,
I really
that's
think
work.
hard
That's
about where we
work.
go.
Yeah. Yeah.
We work hard and we eat a lot, but it's great. So we work hard doing wonderful things, but it's a lot. We really, but what can I say? I can only match the devotion of the winemakers who
Right.
are they're breaking rocks over there, to like rebuild their terraces.
Sometimes literally, yes.
And I'm
Yes,
just,
yes.
I'm just having a long day drinking wine. I mean, come on.
Nice.
But
Well,
yeah, so the fact that I went twice, it was because it worked. And that's
you
the thing.
you got seduced. You got
Yeah.
seduced.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing is that I feel that Italy really invests in people like me in the wine industry, right? They really
Right.
invest in trying to make sure that people who already care about wine um, have these Italian wine regions on their map. Again, on their
Right.
radar, I should say. And, the numbers show that that is working, right? This investment from Italy, from the EU in these kinds of promotions. The people
Yep.
who are already into wine they're buying Italian wines. They are learning about these regions. But I see a disconnect um in general with reaching outside of the insular world of the wine press. And as exciting as it would be to at some point do some writing for a wine magazine, I love these amazing wine magazines. The population that is buying those subscriptions is aging. Um, you know,
Yeah.
like obviously I'm taking my thing to YouTube,
Mhm.
and I just think that I love that Italy's gotten this great reputation, that they're in Michelin star restaurants around the world, like I said, traveling to Japan, doing all this stuff, and it makes a lot of sense to put your time into the big cities on the coast, into London,
Right.
into New York, and to invite people to these lunches, these beautiful lunches that I used to kinda hang around, and that that I still get to go to as just a wine writer. But, the truth is that for most consumers, they're never gonna meet the top wine buyers, you know?
No.
And
No.
for most consumers, their, contact with these products is with the least trained wine shop employee. If they're even
Okay.
lucky enough in the United States to be able to go to an, like, kind of independent boutique wine shop that's gonna
Right.
have, like, a Radicon or something, or a
Exactly.
Collio Bianco even. So, with Italy being so vast in its offerings,
Mhm.
um, I just see that there's a really big gap there, and, yeah, I wanna talk to consumers, and I also just want there
Okay.
to be less of a velvet rope
Yeah.
between wine
Yeah.
professionals and consumers. I really think of my offerings, I really try to have it be kind of a mixed level yoga class, so to speak. On the podcast, I talk to people and I want them to give all their knowledge. And if I need to define a term, I'll define a term,
You have to.
you
You
know.
have to.
But yeah, I'm trying to make this, I'm trying to bridge this. My whole thing is the wine lovers, sort of
Mhm.
the unaffiliated, sometimes this can even be used in sort of a, well, they're not really one of us, but here they are.
Okay.
Term is like it's like when people introduce themselves at wine events, like, oh, she's a writer, and you kind of identify everybody for where you are in this economic ecosystem, right? And
Right.
then there's someone
Right.
who's there, oh, they're just a fan, and that there's this, and I was just like thinking of all of us in the industry, and I'm like, are we not wine lovers? Have
Exactly.
we fallen out of love? So
Right.
I think that we need to empower the nerds and the potential nerds from the
Nice.
Gen Pop, from general population to nerd out about some of these less famous wine regions, and that's my mission. I wanna take I think that I'm a good example of return on investment for the kind of promotions that Italy does. I got hooked. I loved it. Colio Berta put on a dinner, and look,
Right.
like, I'm talking about
And you're
them.
you're smitten. You're smitten.
So I'm a good example, but I just think that I could do even more to reach more everyday people. And the thing is,
Mhm.
if you're a som You told about that test. That's such a good example. Thank you for sharing that you didn't do well in an exam about Italy, even though you're
Right.
here now. So
Right.
that's such a good example. If you are a sommelier or a person who's doing, like, most wine lists will try to cover the whole globe. A lot of wine lists will do that. Not so much in
Right.
Italy, right? But in the United States, a lot of wine lists will try to cover the whole globe. The knowledge that you have to even know a little bit about the whole planet, there's not much time for Italy, and that's not
Yeah.
really suited
Yeah.
to Italy. Like, that
Yeah.
to go through Italy in, like, 2 weeks, like, come on. And then, of course, the wine education world, the wine world, it's a little Franco-centric,
Of course.
right? And, which is just why I don't do that much. It's not that I don't love those wines, it's just, I feel like Italy could use my energy,
Right.
and
Right.
especially
Right.
the
Right.
smaller regions.
Right.
And yeah, I did go to Calabria before I went to Tuscany. And I just think that, if you could get a random person excited about, I don't know, Oltrepò Pavese, or if that person would request it. And I just think we need to do more work, as if I'm part of the Italian, I guess, the Italian
You
wine
are.
promotion
You are
machine.
now.
I am. I have been for a while now, and so I can say "we," even though I'm not Italian. But I think that we need to focus more on just everyday people. Look, obviously, you can't take every consumer on a press trip, but I'm
Right.
hoping that my show answers that question. It says, yeah, well, with Modo di Bere TV, you kind of can. I feel so lucky to have these experiences. And so guilty keeping them to myself. So that's why I've done
So
gone
you
to all this
you
trouble.
and that's why you're sharing.
I
Fantastic.
Anyway, yeah, thank you so much. Oh my God, we talked for so long. I hope that's
It's
okay.
okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for spending some time here and sharing your passion for Friuli, which is always a breath of fresh air for me to find someone who is as in love with Friuli as I am. And I wish you all the best of luck with your endeavors and with Modo di Bere TV and everything. I love your energy. We hooked up on Threads and we immediately said, okay, I smell a collab happening here. So,
Exactly.
and I appreciate you having me on your podcast and taking the time to be on mine.
Well, any friend of Refosco dal Peduncolo Rosso is a friend of mine.
That's me.
It was such
Anyway,
a pleasure, Wayne.
the pleasure was
Thank
all
you.
mine.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very much. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure we'll see each other, perhaps in Udine, perhaps in New
I
York.
hope so. I hope
Yeah.
so. Yeah. Well, when you
Okay.
come, well, let me know. Or even if you come to Veneto or someplace nearby, I'll make my way to you somehow.
Great. Let's make plans. Well, I'll
We'll hang
definitely be
out.
back. No matter how much of Italy I still have left to see, I know I'm going to return because y'all are lovely.
Thank you. And you are lovely as well. So thank you. Keep
Thank
up the
you.
good work.
Cheers. Thank you. I will, because I'm having a great time.
Good. No reason to stop.
Nope.
Hey, thank you for listening here at La Taverna. Make sure you follow us on all the socials, La Taverna Podcast on Instagram, La Taverna Friuli on Facebook. And if you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, it'd be great if you'd leave us a nice 5-star rating. See you next week.